Tristan's heart pounded fiercely as he jolted awake in bed. His sheets twisted around his shaking legs, cold sweat coated his skin, making his pajamas stick to him like a second skin. Memories from that all-too-familiar nightmare clung to his thoughts, refusing to let go. Once a rare visitor in his dreams, this nightmare had become a constant nightly intruder. The room's shadows seemed deeper, and the silence weighed heavy as he grappled with lingering fear. Dragging himself out of bed, he made his way to the kitchen for a comforting sip of water. Tristan had tried almost everything to escape this recurring dream. He even considered searching for the girl from his past, though he believed he could find her with some dedication. He hesitated. Dropping everything in his life to embark on such a mission felt like too great a sacrifice. But perhaps a hidden part of him was also scared of what he might discover. Despite his few attempts to locate her, he always came up empty-handed, and new chilling thought then began to plague him. What if she was no longer alive? The incident that haunted him occurred about 15 years ago. A younger, more impulsive Tristan had, after a night out at a club, whimsically invited a group of girls to a nearby lake. Their merrymaking continued by the serene water, but when it was time to head home, Tristan, under the influence of alcohol, still took it upon himself to drop the girls home. Instead of heading straight home, he made a rash decision to drive around, trying to sober up. Despite being drunk, Tristan zoomed past the city limits. The road stretched wide before him as the first light of dawn painted the horizon. He noticed more vehicles joining the road, early birds starting their day. As the traffic thickened and his headache intensified, he opted for a shortcut back to town. But his path was soon obstructed by an old, rickety Chevy truck trudging along at a snail's pace. Trapped behind the truck with no way to pass due to the increasing oncoming traffic and the road's narrow confines, Tristan's impatience grew. Through the truck's untinted rear window, he could make out two figures inside, growing restless. Tristan honked repeatedly, yelling at them to pick up the pace. In response, the truck would momentarily accelerate, only to slow down again once Tristan caught up. This cat-and-mouse game further fueled Tristan's agitation. Feeling cocky in his sleek BMW, Tristan thought he could easily outmaneuver the old truck. He made a bold move to overtake, but the truck suddenly swerved, its tires screeching against the road's edge. Glancing in his rearview mirror, Tristan's confidence turned to horror as he saw the truck spiraling out of control before crashing into a tree with a loud thud. Panicking, he hit the brakes and hurriedly reversed back to the scene of the accident. The driver was knocked out cold, but beside him, a young girl was desperately trying to fend off the flames now licking the edges of the truck. Her terrified screams pierced the air. Paralyzed by fear and the realization that the truck could explode at any second, Tristan was primarily frozen in place. His mind raced. He wanted to believe no one had seen him cause the accident. On impulse, he jumped back into his BMW and began to speed away. But after only a short distance, he slammed on the brakes. His conscience wrestled with him, urging him to go back and help the girl, especially since he was responsible for the mess. But just as he was about to turn around, another car appeared on the horizon. Panic overtook him, and he pressed his foot to the accelerator, leaving the scene behind. This harrowing incident would forever change him, transforming him into a shadow of the reckless young man he once was before the accident. Tristan led a carefree life, cocooned in the affluence of his family from the Pacific Northwest. His father, Gerald, was the successful CEO of a major corporation for over 2 decades. With millions in the bank and even more in assets, Gerald was always engrossed in the world of business, aiming to grow and safeguard his wealth. As a result, he was rarely at home. The duty of raising the children, including Tristan, fell upon Michelle, Tristan's mother. But being immersed in a life of luxury made the family members somewhat aloof, even arrogant, as if their opulence would last forever. Michelle epitomized this attitude. Many considered her one of the most discontented people they knew. She found fault in almost everything and often gossiped about everyone she met. While many put up a facade of politeness around Michelle, in truth, they found her difficult to be around. Ironically, despite her affluence, Michelle frequently made condescending remarks about working-class individuals, forgetting that she herself hailed from humble beginnings. After her marriage to Gerald, Michelle never had to worry about finances again. Surrounded by affluence, she often found herself bored and restless. Shopping became her pastime, and she would often splurge on unnecessary items just to fill her time. She'd spend hours concocting ways to keep herself entertained. Tristan and his sister, Ashley, growing up in this environment, naturally inherited some of these attitudes from their mother. Ashley was even more of a handful than he was, spoiled to the core. She spent her late 20s living comfortably at home, often indulging in substance abuse and alcohol. Despite attending a prestigious private college, it took her 7 long years to earn her degree. The only reason she wasn't expelled was due to the hefty donations her father made to the institution. Around the time of Tristan's fateful accident, he, too, was on the verge of being expelled from school. While studying, friends offered him various job opportunities, but he turned them down, believing them to be beneath his status. After eventually completing his education, he idled away for 2.5 years, blaming the economic climate for his unemployment. Recognizing that Tristan might struggle to find work on his own merit, Gerald set up a subsidiary company that would handle some tasks from his primary business. Tristan was handed a cushy job here, with a promise of a 6-figure salary in the first year if he simply managed to sell a product. Working a mere 30 hours a week would easily secure him $200K annually. However, Tristan found even this minimal effort challenging. With Gerald frequently traveling and absent from the office, Tristan had no one to oversee his work or push him to be productive. The parents had unwittingly nurtured these problematic behaviors in their children and now found themselves hesitant to sever ties, fearing they might alienate them completely. A few months before the accident, confronted Gerald, expressing his desire to run the company. "I'm not a child anymore," he argued, feeling that his father was undermining his abilities. Not long after, Tristan's ambitions grew bolder. He approached Gerald with a proposal to become the sole owner of the company. Gerald, ever the pragmatic businessman, voiced his reservations about Tristan's readiness for such a responsibility. This only infuriated Tristan further. Seeking solace and validation, he vented his frustrations to Michelle. Always quick to side with her children, Michelle echoed Tristan's sentiments and pressed Gerald to transfer the ownership rights. Exhausted by the relentless demands, Gerald finally relented. However, he set a clear condition: while Tristan could take over the company, doing so marked the beginning of his independent life. He would no longer be entitled to any financial support from his father. Deep down, Gerald foresaw the impending challenges, but he was at his wit's end and yearned for a reprieve from the constant family drama. Upon gaining control, Tristan's first move was to host an extravagant celebration at their family home. He treated himself to a brand new BMW and ordered expensive wines from abroad. Work took a backseat as Tristan jetted off to lavish resorts and hosted parties at upscale hotels, surrounding himself with glamorous company. His subordinates often reached out, urging him to attend crucial company meetings, but Tristan was still preoccupied with his new indulgent lifestyle. As Gerald had foreseen, Tristan's high-flying lifestyle was not sustainable. Not long after moving into a sprawling house on the outskirts of the city, Tristan's downward spiral accelerated. He delved deeper into substance abuse, escalating to more potent drugs. When financial advisors raised alarms about impending losses due to his excessive expenditures, Tristan, in desperation, sought a way out through contacts. He found a buyer for the company. The proceeds from the sale, however, were quickly squandered on his vices, narcotics, parties, and fleeting relationships. He splurged on extravagant items like a helicopter that mostly sat and used, luxury watches, designer clothes, and more vehicles. Before long, his funds were completely drained. On the eve of the tragic accident, Tristan had resorted to borrowing money from his mother for a night out, drinking away his worries in the company of women at a nightclub. Following the accident and the gut-wrenching belief that he had taken 2 lives, panic consumed Tristan. He frantically returned home, hastily gathering essential belongings. The overwhelming fear of facing a lifetime behind bars paralyzed him. Reaching out to his father wasn't an option either. Gerald had grown distant, no longer picking up Tristan's calls. It was unlikely he would intervene now, especially considering the strain in his relationship with Michelle. The robust connection the couple once shared had eroded over time. Gerald was mulling over the idea of divorce in the background. He was discreetly ensuring that Michelle wouldn't be able to claim half of his hard-earned wealth in case of a separation. The realization had dawned upon him that he had prioritized physical attraction over compatibility when choosing a life partner. Broke and drowning in debt, Tristan left a vague note for his sister, merely saying he was heading somewhere. He didn't have a clear plan, only a desperate need to escape and let things cool down. He chose a bustling city as his refuge. Here, the harsh realities of life swiftly bore down on him. His remaining funds were quickly spent on booze and dingy motel stays. Without connections or friends to vouch for him, securing a job became an impossible task. He felt utterly defeated. Days turned into aimless wandering, and nights were spent in any corner that seemed safe and relatively warm. Half a year later, he mustered the courage to reach out to his mother. The news he received was heartbreaking. Ashley had succumbed to a drug overdose. Despite their childhood squabbles, the weight of her loss weighed heavily on him. Ashley was, after all, his only sibling. Additionally, Michelle revealed that she and Gerald had separated for the time being. The twist and surprise, Michelle had taken up a role at her father's modest cleaning business. In this challenging phase, a strange sense of liberation washed over Tristan. For the first time in his life, he felt genuinely untethered. With no money, he resorted to collecting discarded food from restaurant back alleys to sustain himself. During this period, the streets introduced him to a diverse set of individuals, some of whom had once been successful professionals like doctors, businessmen, and lawyers. Listening to their stories, Tristan realized that many of them had faced the same downfall. Their success had clouded their vision, and like him, they had been consumed by excess over the years. The street taught Tristan how to endure and adapt. Once a young man with boundless wealth and arrogance, his challenging circumstances humbled him. Of all his regrets, one haunted him the most, the memory of the young girl's desperate eyes from that tragic accident. His first step away from the street life was thanks to a familiar pizza joint, the very place he'd scavenged leftovers from. Tristan often expressed his gratitude to the owner, Melvin, for creating what he felt was the best pizza in town. And it wasn't just lip service, the pizza was genuinely exceptional. Tristan's frequent presence outside Melvin's shop led to an unexpected gesture. Melvin began offering Tristan and a few others free freshly made pizzas on occasion. At first, this was received with gratitude, but over time, Tristan felt uneasy accepting handouts. Wanting to give back, he proposed promoting the shop by holding a sign on a busy corner. So Tristan's first job began. In a matter of months, Tristan transitioned to being Melvin's delivery person. As the popularity of Melvin's pizzas grew, so did the demand for home deliveries. Tristan took up his responsibility and also managed waste disposal at the shop's end. While Melvin never probed into Tristan's living arrangements, customers sometimes mentioned that their delivery person had an unpleasant odor. Melvin, seeing Tristan's predicament, generously offered him a place in his apartment. The arrangement was simple. In exchange for a roof over his head and meals, Tristan would work at the pizza place. He didn't receive a traditional salary, but his needs were met. For Melvin, this was a dual victory. He not only saved the young man from living on the streets, but he also gained a dedicated worker without the usual salary expenses. For Tristan, this new life was a revelation. He discovered that real happiness wasn't tied to material possessions. Instead, contentment came from meaningful work and being surrounded by genuine friendships. Over time, he and Melvin grew close. After 2 years at the pizza place, Tristan had honed his skills and gained a wealth of knowledge about the business. However, life threw a curveball when Melvin's mother fell ill. With frequent absences to care for her, Melvin entrusted Tristan with managing the pizzeria. One day, Melvin, with a heavy heart, informed Tristan that he might have to sell the business to afford his mother's costly medical treatments. This news left Tristan worried. A change in ownership could mean losing his job and home. Mulling over the situation, a risky idea began to form in his mind. Although the thought made him uneasy, he considered reaching out to his estranged father, Gerald. Gerald listened intently as Tristan spoke, his emotions evident, even though he tried to mask them. Although they hadn't spoken in years, Gerald had always kept an eye on Tristan from a distance. He hoped that one day Tristan would find his way, learn from his mistakes, and reach out. That day had finally come, and Tristan wasn't asking for a handout but presenting a business proposal. Choosing to support Tristan's initiative, Gerald invested in Melvin's pizza business. This financial backing not only allowed Melvin to retain his original pizzeria but also aided in his mother's medical treatments. Under Melvin's management, the business thrived, expanding to 2 more locations within a span of 2 years. Despite the growth, Tristan's role remained unchanged. He continued to manage the original pizza place, just as he had agreed with Gerald. He had no ownership in the growing business, but seemed content in his managerial position. For Tristan, it wasn't about status or wealth anymore. He found satisfaction in simple, honest work. As the days turned into months, Tristan settled into a routine. He had carved out a simple yet meaningful life for himself. However, the shadows of his past began to haunt him. The traumatic memory of the accident, especially the young girl's cries for help, invaded his nights, disrupting his sleep. Despite the pain this memory caused, Tristan recognized the accident as a pivotal moment in his life. It led to his downfall, forcing him to confront his choices. Through this challenging journey, he had discovered the true essence of life and deeper values. Tristan glanced at the clock, realizing it was already 5 a.m. Sleep had eluded him again. He sighed, deciding to make some tea. Maybe he'd start his workday early. As he approached the restaurant, he could see the early morning activity beginning inside. As he entered, he almost bumped into a young man. "Sorry, we aren't open yet," Tristan said. "I'm looking for Tristan, the manager," the man replied. "That's me," Tristan responded with surprise. The young man paused, sizing him up. "Oh, I thought you'd be, I don't know, more formal looking or something. Anyway, I'm Derek, Melvin's cousin. I'm here to take your place." Tristan's eyebrows knit together in confusion. Melvin hadn't mentioned anything about this. Suddenly, a memory resurfaced. A couple of weeks earlier, Melvin had commented on how worn out Tristan looked. At the time, Tristan had confessed his ongoing struggle with sleep, and Melvin had kindly suggested he might need some time off. Grabbing his phone, Tristan dialed Melvin, who explained, "Derek has been pestering me for a while, wanting to manage one of the restaurants. He has been assisting at our other location. I thought this could be a good opportunity for you to take that break we talked about. Whenever you're ready to return, Derek will step aside and assist you." Tristan was touched by Melvin's care and concern for his well-being. As he began to show Derek the ropes, explaining the various aspects of daily operations, Derek interrupted him repeatedly. "I've seen all this before," Derek said confidently. "I've got it covered." With a nod, Tristan felt relieved. If Derek knew the routine, it would make Tristan's temporary departure smoother. Regardless, he decided to see out the day's tasks before stepping back. Tristan found himself in unfamiliar territory, waking up without the immediate need to rush to work. He contemplated taking some days off at home or perhaps embarking on a hiking trip. Though he hadn't settled on a plan, the routine of work had become such an integral part of his life that its sudden absence felt strange. Meanwhile, Derek, just 3 days into his management role, made a significant change. He let go of one of the older male waiters. In his place, Derek had posted an ad on Craigslist and had already lined up potential replacements for interviews. Enter Marcy, a striking young woman who caught Derek's eye immediately. Initially, he had guessed her age to be closer to 30, but after observing her more closely, he concluded she was likely in her early 20s. Derek, at 32, had a track record of flirting with waitresses at his previous job, with no intention of settling down anytime soon. He believed that serious relationships were burdensome. Blessed with handsome features and a management position, Derek rarely faced rejection. The day took a challenging turn when a large group of college students flooded the restaurant, placing substantial pizza orders. The kitchen team, only half an hour into their shift, hadn't prepared for such a rush. Derek snapped, "If any customer leaves unsatisfied, I'll have heads rolling in the kitchen." The head chef, visibly upset by Derek's approach, responded, "We've barely been open for 30 minutes, Derek." "That's exactly my point," Derek said. "We are open, and the goal is to serve customers, not get ready to serve." The chef, looking a tad exasperated, mumbled a retort and hurried back to the heat of the kitchen. Not long after, Derek almost bumped into Marcy. "Why are you hanging around here?" he chided. "The dining area needs you." Without uttering a word, she sped up, leaving Derek momentarily entranced by her figure as she vanished through a door. Later in the day, Derek stepped outside for a moment of fresh air. He noticed Marcy on a bench, soaking in the sunlight. "Everyone deserves the break," he aimed. He approached her with a friendly grin. "Is the seat taken?" Marcy, slightly startled, made space. "Not at all," she said. He sat down and inquired, "So why choose a humble place like this? You could easily be elsewhere," turning heads, raising eyebrows. She playfully retorted, "Oh, and where would that be? Perhaps a fashion runway, donning exquisite dresses and leaving audiences in awe?" She laughed. "That life isn't for me." "Is it the glamorous dresses or the audience's attention you dodge?" "Both," she responded, getting up to leave. However, Tristan impulsively grabbed her wrist. "How about a stroll after work, maybe get a drink?" Marcy pulled away sharply and said, "Perhaps you should focus on those who find you charming." She then turned on her heel and left. Derek, a bit taken back, felt a tinge of anger. "She won't get away with dismissing me," he silently vowed. Throughout the remainder of the day, Marcy's image dominated his thoughts. He was used to leaving the restaurant early, but that evening he decided to stay. As the hours passed, Derek plotted a way to quell Marcy's confidence. Derek waited for several days, observing Marcy and letting her settle into her new role. He crafted his plan meticulously, wanting to ensure its success. One fateful evening, after the restaurant's closing time, Derek gathered all the employees. His face was stern, his voice filled with authority. "There's been an unfortunate report of theft at our establishment." Murmurs of surprise and concern spread among the workers. They looked at each other, wondering who could be responsible. Michael, a long-standing employee, voiced his disbelief. Who would do such a thing? Derek's gaze landed on Marcy, their newest member. He declared, with faint regret, "I'm afraid it's Marcy." A look of surprise washed over the employees. Marcy's face paled. "I've never stolen anything. This is ridiculous." A malicious smile tugged at Derek's lips. "Prove it then. Show us you have nothing to hide." Hesitantly, Marcy emptied her purse on the table. The items scattered, basic necessities, but nothing suggesting theft. Unsatisfied, Derek presented further, and your coat could be hiding something. Marcy's eyes welled up with tears. You can't be serious, Derek. He smirked, shed the coat. If you're innocent, what's there to fear? If not, perhaps you'll reconsider staying here. Meanwhile, Tristan found himself wandering the city streets, feeling an overwhelming weight on his chest. The insomnia, combined with the stress of his recent break, had him lost in thought. Seeing the homeless huddled in corners, he was reminded of his past and felt an overpowering empathy for them. As Tristan approached the restaurant, he noticed an elderly homeless man seated on the curb. On a whim, he decided to grab a pizza for him from the restaurant. Inside, an intense standoff was taking place between Marcy and Derek. Marcy's defiant stare bore into Derek, her determination evident. As if to prove her innocence, she swiftly removed her sweater. The room went still, the collective breath of the staff catching in their throats as they took in the sight of her scar-covered body. Suddenly, the door creaked open, and Tristan stepped in. He froze, taking in the scene before him. His eyes darted from Marcy's discarded sweater on the floor to her scarred form. A rush of memories hit him, and a chill ran down his spine. Those haunting eyes, which had plagued his nightmares for years, were now right before him. It was her, the girl from the accident. He was at a loss for words, his mind racing. What were the odds? Why was she here, and why did she seem to have no recognition of him? His anger surged as he pieced together the situation, realizing that Derek had subjected Marcy to this public humiliation. How could he, and more importantly, how had their past crossed again after all these years? Was it destiny or just a cruel twist of fate? Tristan's voice was firm yet calm. Derek, this isn't how things are done here. I'll be discussing this with Melvin. Everyone else, you can leave. He gently handed Marcy her sweater, encouraging her to cover herself. Outside, the cool night air did little to soothe Tristan's racing mind. He hesitated, then offered, "Can I walk you home?" His eyes darted away, avoiding direct contact with hers. Did she remember him from that fateful day? Marcy, still shaken, hesitated only briefly before nodding her assent. Along the way, she opened up about her life, describing her duty to care for her ailing stepfather. Reaching her home, an apartment, Marcy hesitated but then invited Tristan inside. The sight that greeted him was of a frail older man lying on the couch. Despite his physical condition, his eyes were sharp, taking in his daughter and the stranger accompanying her. Marcy, ever the gracious host, attempted to offer some refreshments, but Tristan declined. Instead, they found themselves in her small kitchen, the walls closing in as Tristan braced himself to discuss a topic he had long avoided. As Marcy recounted her accident and the aftermath, Tristan's heart pounded. The details matched his haunting memories, yet she never mentioned him or his role in the accident. Exiting her apartment, the weight of their conversation pressed heavily on Tristan. Marcy didn't remember him, perhaps a mercy of her trauma. Logically, he knew he could move forward, put the past behind him. But emotionally, he felt tethered to Marcy, pulled back to that moment in time. Every instinct told him he should confess, seek closure, but was that fair to her? Would it give her peace or simply reopen old wounds? Marcy continued her duties at the restaurant. One evening, Tristan approached her hesitantly. "Need a ride home?" he asked. She looked surprised but accepted his offer. The next evening, the pattern repeated. Tristan found himself waiting for her shift to end, eager to offer her another ride. It became a regular occurrence, the two of them driving together through the city streets illuminated by the warm glow of streetlights. Sometimes they engaged in light chatter, other times simply enjoying the silent companionship. But as the days went by, Tristan found himself grappling with a storm of emotions. He wanted to confess about the past, about the accident, but the weight of the truth bore heavily on him. As he wrestled with this internal conflict, another feeling began to emerge, an attraction to Marcy. Every moment with her only deepened his longing. He began finding excuses to see her outside of their car rides. Without realizing it, Tristan was becoming completely enamored with Marcy. Yet lurking in the shadows, with the truth always threatening to emerge and shatter the fragile bond they were building. One night, under the soft glow of the restaurant's ambient lights, Tristan, nervous, asked Marcy if she'd like to join him for dinner. To his surprise, she agreed. As the evening rolled in, they sat across from each other, the atmosphere charged with anticipation. Marcy began, her voice quivering slightly. Growing up, Jack, my stepdad, was good to me. He never raised a hand against me, but he had issues with alcohol. That fateful day, he'd been drinking since dawn. We were headed to the hospital to visit my mom, who was in the last stages of her battle with cancer. I was just a kid, too young and scared to tell him that getting behind the wheel drunk was dangerous. She paused, taking a deep breath before continuing. I resented you, Tristan, every time I looked at these scars. I wished you had suffered, not me. Tristan's heart raced, the realization hit him hard. She had known his identity all along. As Marcy went on, it became evident that her anger was fueled by her stepdad's version of events. Marcy's voice softened when she passed her car that day. Jack couldn't handle it. He was so intoxicated he could barely keep the car on the road. You weren't the cause, Tristan, he was. Tears welled up in her eyes, her voice breaking. No one's ever looked past my scars. They see them, and they see a freak. With tenderness, Tristan reached out, lightly touching her scarred skin. Marcy, you're not a freak. You're strong, resilient, and beautiful. We're going to fix everything. The weight of years of guilt and shame lifted from Tristan's shoulders. The accident wasn't his fault, and together they could find a way to mend their wounded hearts. Marcy had mixed feelings about her stepdad. Despite his struggles with alcoholism, he had faithfully cared for her mother until her last breath. When Jack became ill, he urged Marcy to let go of her resentment towards the man in the BMW, emphasizing that it wasn't his fault. Soon after, Tristan decided to visit his father and opened up to him about his life's events. Seeing his son all grown up, matured, and responsible, Gerald felt overwhelmed with gratitude. He marveled at the transformation from a once arrogant youth to a refined gentleman. Not long after, Marcy checked into a plastic surgery clinic for a procedure. During her stay, Gerald, wanting to help, arranged for a leading expert to attend to her stepdad, Jack. By the time she was ready to leave the hospital, Jack, though reliant on a walking stick, stood tall and steady, eagerly waiting to welcome her back. A few days later, Tristan reached out to Melvin, informing him of their upcoming visit. He invited Marcy, Jack, and Gerald to dine at Melvin's newly opened restaurant. As the evening progressed, Gerald couldn't help but beam with pride, observing the genuine respect everyone held for his son. Melvin, who had grown close to Tristan, considered him not just a good acquaintance but a true friend. He often said Tristan was among the finest individuals he had ever known. That evening, as everyone settled around the table, Melvin, in a personal gesture, took their orders. Within moments, aromatic and mouth-watering pizzas were served, symbolizing the warmth and bond shared among them. "Welcome to Empty Pizza, everyone," Melvin announced with enthusiasm. "This is our latest branch, the third in line. Tristan and Mr. Sheen, there's a special surprise waiting for you." Before dessert, Tristan's gaze followed Melvin's gesture to the other end of the room. To his astonishment, it was his mother, Michelle. She looked different, more at peace. The flashy jewelry she always wore was missing, replaced by simple elegance. There was a calm and tranquility about her that he hadn't seen before. With a playful grin, Tristan said to Melvin, "You're always one step ahead, aren't you? It's like you read my mind." Melvin chuckled. "I had a hunch you wanted a reunion, and I thought maybe you and Gerald could use a little push." As the days turned into months, the wounds of the past began to heal. Gerald, seeking a quieter life, chose to step back from his bustling business operations. He and Michelle found solace in a quaint farmhouse, cherishing the simplicity and tranquility it offered. Meanwhile, Tristan and Marcy remained dedicated to their roles at Melvin's cozy pizza joint. Their shared experiences and countless hours together deepened their connection. One particularly exhausting weekend, after an exhilarating hike, Tristan paused to take in Marcy's presence. The intensity of the moment was palpable. He drew her closer, whispering, "Thank you. You've given me a renewed sense of purpose." Well, Marcy sensed his gratitude. The depth of his feelings was still unfolding. For her, the more they shared, the more she enjoyed Tristan's company. Their bond thickened with each passing day. To Tristan, Marcy wasn't just another face in the crowd. She was his anchor, the one who had shifted the trajectory of his life. As days rolled on, Marcy was increasingly impressed by Tristan's kindness and genuine nature. It took a while, but Tristan eventually opened up about his tumultuous past, revealing the life he led before their fateful meeting. Realizing the transformation in Tristan and recognizing the role she played in it filled Marcy with a sense of pride and fulfillment. Yet neither of them felt the need to rush things. They were content finding joy in the present and relishing their evolving relationship. Thank you for joining us today on Deep Stories. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on our next video.